Ready to go? Yeah, there we go. Well, welcome to Studies in Leviticus. Hope you're in the right class tonight. So, yes. Oh, my goodness sakes. We have to pray for our sister Terry Van Soo. She had a accident tonight and tweaked her ankle. So pray for healing for that. So always happens. So well, let's have some prayer. We'll jump into our study tonight. Father, we're just grateful that you've given us a beautiful night to gather together and to study your word again as we make our journey through Genesis, that you'll give us wisdom and understanding, and that you'll help us to see this new phase, a new narrative with Jacob as he's headed north to his uncle Laban, as he's meeting his potential bride. And so, Father, we just ask that you give us wisdom and discernment on how to apply it, Lord, as a narrative to us. And we thank you for it. We just pray for Terry tonight. We ask for healing for her ankle and for others who just need help. Pray for Jerry as he's traveling down to the airport. Give him journey mercies there and back. And so, God, we thank you for just the way you care for us and love us. We just pray for your goodness to us. In Christ's name, and all God's people said, please. Amen. Thank you so very much. So we are looking at Jacob, who has left home because his brother Esau has secretly decided to kill him as soon as Isaac died. So Mom got him out of there pretty quick on the ruse of, I don't want you marrying any of these pagan women in the area like your brother did. So go back home up north to Padan Aram, and I want you to find a wife basically from one of your cousins. So that's where he's at. Does anybody know how old Jacob is when he goes up there?
Well, was it
75. 75 years old. He's old. Yeah, older, but he'll also live until he's 147. So he's got a lot of life ahead of him. But it makes you think about the Middle Eastern marriage system, because the women he is probably marrying, they're much younger.
So do all men wait that long at that time?
Not generally, but some do.
40 years.
Isaac was 40 by the time he got married. So it's, and if you go back and you look at the genealogy in Genesis 5, you'll see when those men beget. And you're going to notice that they beget earlier and earlier and earlier, because they're doing what earlier? They're dying earlier. That's that shift that's making their way through, all right? And you see that even in chapter 10 with the nations, but also with the genealogy of Noah's sons. So that's part of that. All right, so we are in the midst of Jacob meeting Rachel. You remember, he met her at the well where all the shepherds gathered together, and in a Herculean feat, I'm pretty sure he herniated himself, but the Bible doesn't tell that, when he moved the stone. You remember that? He moved it off of the mouth of the well so that they could get their flocks watered, because it took numerous men to roll that thing off. And so she is introduced to her cousin, providentially brought there by God, and now she's in the process of introducing them to family. All right, so we're in verses 13 and 14a of chapter 29 in Genesis in your notes. So it says this: as soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him, and he embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home, and there Jacob told him all these things. That's a testimony. Then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." Now, you need to pay attention to that, because there's going to be a problem with that down the road. Okay? So just pay attention to the language, because it resurfaces, and it's not in a good way. Okay? So go back to my question. What does Laban do? First thing he does, all Middle Eastern men do it, and it makes you very uncomfortable. They kiss you. Okay? They kiss you, they embrace you. It always happens that way, all right? So I told, I don't know if Brother Bill experienced this. I did it the last time. Not so much the first. Well, I did do it when Bill and I were there in Kenya. Kenya men, when they start to feel that they're good friends with you, they want to hold your hands. Now, in an American culture, that just does not go well. So I'm bristling as, Pastor Fred's holding my hand, walking down the street with me, and I'm thinking, man, I hope this does not get on YouTube someplace. But they don't think anything about it. Fred's brother Humphrey did the same thing to me. Once they feel a connection. It's actually an honor, by the way, when they feel that they can engage you that way too. He does what? Now he listens to Jacob's story, all right? So there's a testimony there, and he culturally treated him as a son. So that's what's going on in the initial sort of connection to Laban himself. Yes? I'm sorry? I don't know. No, he was old. So I don't know how old Laban would have been, because it would have been his mother's brother. So he's probably in his 90s, 100, I don't know. So, yes, Jeff?
So would the relationship be similar to the one that Lot had with Abraham?
It would have been that way culturally, Jeff, especially if that man loses his father. The other men in the tribe, if you would please, they embrace them and bring them in as sons. And so it would have been much like that. Okay? Except Laban has sons. That's the problem. It's going to be the problem, by the way. All right? Note, this is Rashi. You remember Rashi is a French Jewish scholar. I research Rashi, and I do Maimonides. He's another Jewish scholar that I research when I'm studying Old Testament narrative in particular, because they give us ideas. I don't necessarily agree with them, but it's interesting to know how Jewish scholars interpret Jewish narrative. It's helpful for us. Rashi comments that, and I might add, wrongly infers, there's my disclaimer, that each step was driven by greed. But it's interesting to think about this. First, he meets Jacob thinking he is laden with what? Riches. Why would he think that? It hadn't been that long before Isaac was in that area getting Rachel. Well, Isaac didn't go. Remember, Eliezer went up there? And Eliezer, from the moment he got there, he started doing what? He was laying out the cash because Abraham was a very rich guy. So he is shelling out the dough, and everybody is really happy, and Rachel ends up going back with Eliezer, and of course Isaac marries her. So you can imagine that if Laban hears a family member of Abraham is now back up in our area, there's the assumption of what? yeah, the cash is going to start flowing again. So first he meets Jacob thinking that he's laden with riches, but he finds none because he's not carrying the mass entourage that Eliezer would have had. All right. Second, he embraces Jacob thinking that he has gold in the folds of his garments. So the hug is not an embrace, it's trying to hear the jingle. It's trying to figure out, hey, where's that cash at, all right? Third, he kisses him on both cheeks thinking he has stored pearls in his cheeks. But when he finds nothing, he begrudgingly brings him into his home thinking that at least there will be a church, an inheritance. But we see that Jacob was initially put to work for nothing. All right? It's going to be very interesting to watch this. So whether this is true or not, I don't know. It's Rashi's comments on this. Has no biblical support, but it's interesting to think about. Note, it is only in the next verse that we see he worked for nothing, and that could have been a cultural form of appreciation for church, free room and board. The next verses dispel this as some type of nefarious plan on Laban's part. Laban, church, was a scoundrel, all right? But the above verses do not yet bear this out. We don't know that yet, okay? So we call this anachronistic interpretation. Anybody know what that means? What's anachronistic interpretation? Anachronistic, chronos. It means outside of time. It means you're reading something into the scriptures that hasn't yet happened yet. You have to wait for it over here, so you can't make that assumption over here. That's bad biblical interpretation because you don't know that information yet. You have to take it as it comes. All right. Verses 14b to 15, what does Laban do? After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." So that dispels the argument of Rashi, because he's asking, what do I need to pay you? You've been working for nothing for 30 days, sort of a gratuity, but we can't keep doing this. All right? So Laban actually seeks to, church? Yeah, he actually seeks to pay Jacob for his work. No, this may appear to be a kind gesture, but it is not. Laban has now moved. Remember that language I gave you up front to watch for? At the beginning, it's almost as if Laban treated him as a son. Now we see that there's a distinction going on here. Laban has now equated him with a laborer, a servant, not a true son. What will you charge me? That's the nature of that language, okay? So describe Laban's daughters. Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was, church, Leah. And the name of the younger was Rachel. Laban had two. There's your descriptive. The first one thing we learn about him. Two, Leah was the older. Rachel was the youngest. Why is that going to be important? Because the oldest is married first. So Jacob is not going to be aware of cultural normatives. He should be, but he isn't. Okay. Verse 17, so how are the daughters described? Leah had this, very interesting. She had weak eyes. What do you think that means? I'll tell you. Say that to me again.
Boys don't make passes like girls wear glasses.
See, Deb, how much I love you.
I didn't have glasses then.
You had glasses in when did you get glasses?
Well, I was like married a long time.
Oh, that was my other wife. That's right. All right. Yes. No, my first girlfriend didn't have glasses either.
Does it mean that
I don't know, but do you find that an interesting descriptive? And we don't use that language for that. All right, they had weak eyes. Well, there's an interesting comparative, and that's what I think you have to look for. Yeah, Doc, please. To look at someone in the eye when you're talking to them, yes. Weak eyes, Doc is suggesting it may be a lack of, what's the word I want, Doc? When you don't have good eye contact, you look away. Lack of confidence, Steve, that self-conscious, whatever it might be. I always look at the language because I find comparatives that help me with this. So Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel, she was smoking hot, all right? That's Hebrew, all right, if you haven't got that. All right, Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Notice the extra language that's describing her, okay? So when we look at it, Leah had weak eyes. No, the word weak is difficult to understand. It could mean she had bad eyesight. She squinted, yeah, which does not make you look attractive, by the way, when you're trying to see something, okay? B, this could be an option. She had unattractive eyes. I don't really know what that means offhand. I don't know. C, it could mean this. She had delicate or soft and beautiful eyes. Jeff?
I've got the New Revised Standard Version, and it says Leah had lovely eyes.
She had lovely eyes. So it's C. Yeah, Revised Standard Version actually, I think, has the better translation out of that. I don't know what the Greek says, Doc. I'll have to look that up in the LXX. That's a good question.
But he loved Rachel, right? So he assumed that Leah was more unattractive, undesirable. So that the dad had to con him into taking her so he could get Rachel.
If she wasn't already married,
Because of,
undesirable,
yeah.
couldn't find a husband.
The conversation is that in some way Leah was undesirable
Yeah.
because she hasn't been taken yet. And so that might be part of that. It might be the only thing that was desirable on her was her eyes. And it could be that. So Revised Standard Version, I think, Jeff, you've got that, a good translation in regards to that. 2, Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. There's the descriptives of her. Okay. In colloquialism, we might say, and we know this to be true if you follow the story, Leah was beautiful where? Inside. Rachel was beautiful outside. So if you do the comparatives, Leah may not have been a very beautiful form, but she was a beautiful person. Rachel had a beautiful form, but she was not a nice person, by the way. We're going to see that later on too. Okay. Verse 18, what do we learn about Jacob that will be connected to his wages? 18, Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. What do we learn about this? I find this interesting too, because who made the suggestion? Jacob offered that, all right? What is in connection with that? You have to think culturally.
7 years if you're a slave, you're free.
Correct, but that's not what's going on here. You have to think about the context. What is Jacob, what is he in essence, asking Laban for.
So is he, I don't know, he's realizing that she's the younger, so he's giving 7 years for the other one to get married first?
Nope. Deb asks, since she's not the oldest, he's given Leah 7 years to get married. Get out of there so I can take number 2.
No, I was holding her for 7 years.
If you're going to marry somebody in the Middle East as a man, you cannot do something unless you do something with the father. Pay for her. Dowry. Which tells you also that Jacob showed up with what? Nothing. All he has is his labor. He does not have the riches. So all this stuff's fitting together as you think about the story in itself, all right? So number 1, Jacob was in love with Rachel. That's what we gather from this, okay? And second, he was willing to work for her for 7 years, church, technically, as the bride price. That's what that was all about, okay? 10 cows, Bill.
So you can't get a counter offer for Rachel though, can you? I mean, some guy comes offers 10, they can't outbid it.
If his father accepts, then it's legitimate. But if another guy says, "Hey, forget the 7 years. I've got cash. I don't need a mortgage, Cindy. It's a cash payment. I'm going with that one." So it's so down the that's the competitiveness. But once the verbal contract's made, then it's finished in regards to that. 19. How does Laban respond? Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man." Isn't that encouraging, by the way? Stay here with me. So Laban did what then? Yeah, that's an acceptance. Okay. Verse 20, what is true love? So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel. Oh, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Yeah. True love waits. Only 7 years. True love is oblivious to time. That's right.
Well, I just find it amazing that he's in love with her and he basically just saw her.
Love at first sight, Deb. That's how that works. So, yeah. Verse 21, what happened after 7 years? Then Jacob said to Laban, contract over. Give me my wife. I've been looking at her for 7 years. And she's not getting any younger. She's probably 60 by now. So give me my wife. My time is completed and I want to make love to her. Can you imagine saying that to your father-in-law? Holy smoke. I don't know. I don't want to be around to find out, Cindy. Jacob demanded Laban keep his side of the agreement so that he could, this is actually what they're saying, by the way, they can consummate the marriage.
My Bible says
Go into her. Yeah, that's a little bit more softer on this one. So, and you have to remember that was very legitimate. That was a legitimate issue, all right? Because the marriage was not a true marriage until they consummated it through sexual union with each other. I mean, that was plain and simple, all right? And if you read through the scriptures, it was very important, too, that she be a virgin, and on her wedding night, the sheet was kept as evidence that she was a virgin. Because if you remember, there's a story where somebody accused a woman of not being a virgin, and the father of the bride still had the cloth and said, no, she was. Here's the blood evidence, if you would, that she was indeed a virgin. And then he had to pay retro for smearing her reputation. So it was very, very important in that particular culture. All right. 22, what did Laban do? So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. So yeah, he's celebrating. All right. He threw a wedding. That's what you do. Throw a banquet, throw a party, invite the neighbors. So he's got a new son-in-law. 23, how was the deceiver? Remember what Jacob's name means. Deceiver, supplanter, that's who he is. It's what he's going to wrestle with that all of his life. All right, even to the point where the angel of the Lord, which we're going to talk about, which was Christ, broke his hip. And even then, post that experience where his name got changed to Israel, even after that, you see the narrative going back and forth between Jacob and Israel, and you can see why, all right? Because old habits die hard, and he wasn't living into his new name, all right? So how was the deceiver deceived? But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and Jacob made love to her. And you're going to scratch your head on that one, aren't you? Oh, man, I don't know. Good night. Laban brought Leah to his tent instead of Rachel. Man. A little bit too much wine, Deb, I think. So, verse 24, what additional information do we receive? And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. We don't usually see women's name in the scriptures. It wasn't culturally relevant. So you have to pay attention to that then. It's like, why do I need to know what her servant's name is? Because down the road, she's going to be a wife. All right? So it's all setting us up as we look forward in the narrative of what happens with poor Jacob trying to have kids with these two women, all right? Laban gave a customary gift to his daughter as a servant or slave to help her with her new household duties, all right? So Laban was of some means himself, all right, to be able to do that. Because if you were poor, of course that wouldn't happen. No, this gift would be the specific church. Remember, we talked about this with who? Sarah and Hagar. Yes. Specific property of the wife of which the husband would have. So when Hagar started dissing Sarah and Sarah went to Abraham and started complaining, Abraham said to Sarah, you do what you want with her. She's your property. Kind of washed his hands of that. That's a cultural issue that we have to remember. No, this explains the ability, right, to give the maidservant to her husband as a wife, but not his right to take her. She has to be given to him. It's her property. All right? That's how that worked. And you remember we talked about what legitimate wives were in contrast to, for example, concubines who end up becoming wives. All right? The primary wife, she's the one that's got all the power. Do you remember that? We've talked about that culturally. Okay. No, this is different than Abraham in the sense that Hagar was not a gift from her father, but to Abraham from Pharaoh. All right? In probability. However, the ability, right, of Sarah to do with her what she wanted seems to be the same as we have seen. So even though Pharaoh gave that apparently to Pharaoh, to Abraham, it was a gift to Sarah. That's how that would have culturally worked. He would not have given that to a man. Verse 25 in A, what was the surprise? When morning came, there was Leah. All right. Wrong bride. Yep. He should have turned on the lights. Absolutely, Mary. He should have turned on the lights. Poor guy. The question arises as to how Jacob did not know this was the wrong bride. So it's a...
He was a descendant of Isaac who couldn't figure out the hairy arms.
He was blind.
He was blind, Kathy. That's right. Brilliant answer.
We don't.
We don't know. Okay. Possible suggestions. Real possibility there, folks. Jacob was drunk. Mary, it was late in the evening and he didn't turn the lights on, all right? And it was dark. Third, very possible, Leah would have been veiled up until the time of entering the tent. Or all the above. Absolutely. Yeah. 25b and c, what transpired. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you've done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" There's your connecting word with Jacob himself, the deceiver. A, the confrontation, and a what goes around comes around moment, although probably not recognized personally. That's his name. So up until this point, Jacob has done nothing but what? Deceive. So he's getting a little taste of his lifestyle that's coming back to him, all right? So Jacob is confronting his father-in-law about what is happening. 26, how does Laban respond? Laban said, "Oh, sorry, it's a cultural thing. It's not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one." And what do you think Jacob's doing now? He's probably thinking, maybe this is a 2-for-1 deal. But we know Laban, and that's not going to be true either, is it? And this absolutely amazes me. So it's a cultural thing, which we conveniently forgot to tell you about, by the way, that you don't get Rachel, you get Leah first. Yeah, Bill, did you have a question, please? Well, that is an interesting question. And I think I have an answer in here someplace. So if I get past this, Bill, let me know. I'm studying in Genesis 49 right now. So my PowerPoint isn't as familiar on this. So some scholars believe this was made up trickery on Laban's part and that there's evidence this could be true. We have no cultural information in the specific area and time to substantiate that the older should get married before the younger. However, in Hinduism, which is one of the oldest religions in the world, the oldest daughter is elevated in her distinctive role just as the eldest son is. She reflects the spiritual and cultural lineage of her family and was and still is to be given in marriage church first. So we do have an area cultural event that we can point to even to today. Note the possible cultural expectation suggests an even more despondent answer. It suggests that Rachel was the honored guest at the table with Jacob, while Leah, knowing what was to transpire as the oldest, was denied the joy and sat in the sidelines. Can you imagine that? Yeah. She either loved Jacob, which is suggested, it will be further suggested, and went along with the plan, or she was simply being obedient to her father, which in that culture would have been exactly true. Either way, it was a tragedy from the very beginning on one of the most important days of a woman's life. So she was basically prostituted by her dad. And her sister got all of the accolades, all the honor, all the dignity, and she received none of it. So your heart has to go out to her, doesn't it? Which I think is, when we get down the road, I think it's why God looks at her so favorably, because she was hurt. And that's who God goes after, by the way.
And my guess is this is not the first incident in her life where she went through such sadness.
Kathy said it would probably not the first time that that's happened. I would venture to say so as well. Verse 27, what was Laban's suggestion? Finish the daughter's bridal week. This interesting phrase, by the way, and I don't want to take a rabbit trail on this, but this is one of the first instances where we begin to understand the week itself in relation to Daniel in chapter 9 with the 70 weeks of Daniel. So scholars will point to this because it's a bridal week, all right? Then we will give you the younger one also in return. This is not a 2-for-1 deal. Laban said to Jacob, I'll give you Sarah, but guess what the bride price is again? Yeah. So can you imagine a man working 14 years to get one woman? And yet he does. Yeah. So number 1, finish the customary bridal week with Leah. 2, after this week is ended, I will give you Rachel, which we call in trust. All right. But Jacob must work another 7 years to complete this bride price. That's the contractual. So there are some people that believe that after Leah had her bridal week with her husband, that Rachel actually was given to him as his wife. So now do you see the other issue with Leah? I mean, she didn't even have, she had more than a week to be with her husband before her sister became the secondary wife.
And a week is 7 years.
And a week is 7. The week in 7-year ratio is how Daniel brings that out. All right.
Well,
So-
he had to, for 7 years, he had to work again for 7 years. So that was the bridal week for the other girl.
It was the bridal week was the customary week that the husband and wife spent with each other. So it's just a week. Yeah, right. But in prophetic connection, Kath, they look now at that week is equal to how many years did Jacob work? 7. 7. The word in Hebrew is not a week anyway. It's a heptad. It means any quantity of 7. That's what that means. But it's connected up now in Daniel when Daniel talks about 70 weeks. He's not talking about weeks. He's talking about years. All right? That's what he's talking about. So that was a side out. I won't charge you any extra for that one tonight. All right? Verse 28. Did the 2 deceivers keep their word? And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. So the answer to that is, yeah, they did. Yep. So both kept their word on that one, and both daughters were married off then to Jacob. 29, what gift did Laban give to Rachel? Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Once again, we've got another woman being named, and that's important because women are not named in the scriptures very often, so we know she's going to have a future role, which once again, she will eventually become one of the other wives to Jacob. All right. Yeah, Bilhah is the other lady that connected with her. So what would be the relationship between man and wives? Okay. Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. It's a very sad story, isn't it? It just really is, all the way around. Yeah. The thing that we notice here in this text is that there's a significant what? Affection difference. What does it say? His love for Rachel was greater, and his love than his love for Leah. All right. There's going to be a passage where it says that Leah was hated. But you have to understand that it wasn't that Jacob hated her. It's a comparative. And that is, in the degree that he loved Rachel, it would look to anyone that he did what with Leah? He hated her because there was no affection towards her, right? Note the absence of any joy, any sense of it felt like only a few days when it came to these next 7 years, which I find interesting as well. Verse 31, how is Leah treated by Jacob through God's eyes when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved? Jeff, do you have an RSV on that one? Can you find that for me, 31? That might be the passage where it's translated hated, by the way.
It said, saw that Leah was unloved.
Unloved, okay. Okay, that's not the one I went after then. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Now, in culture, what did that mean between those two women? We've talked about this before, because it happened with Sarah. It happened with Rachel. Yeah. So Leah, the one who is sidelined, in God's eyes, she is the one that is what? She's blessed. Rachel is now the one who is cursed. So you've got this inversion going on. Jacob is treating these two ladies completely different than God is treating them right now. Okay? So the thing that we get from that is we know that Leah is just, she's not loved. All right? There's not any affection towards her whatsoever. Well, I don't know, Steve. We can debate that. There's actually a passage, Steve, we'll look at from Jacob's perspective, and it's the first time I feel bad for a guy who's said he's got to have sex with his wife. Because he's coming out of the field, and it's like, yeah, you got to have sex with me tonight. And it's like, my gosh, no. Can I just have supper and go to bed? That's part of that storyline. No, love is more than church what? Emotions. It's a choice. That's the biblical idea of what that is. And Jacob did not choose what? He did not choose rightly in the sight of the Lord. So even with Leah, we're being a little anachronistic again, because remember, we don't have the scriptures. Jacob does not have a full-on understanding of who God is. There's no idea of what he expects. All right? But he could have chosen to love Leah just as much as he could have chosen to love Rachel. But he's not choosing to do that. And it's going to cause some problems. How did God judge Jacob for this sin? Rachel was then, church, she was barren. She could not have kids. She eventually did, but it was a long way off. All right? In fact, if you know the story, she only had 2 kids. Joseph, and what happened to her when she was delivering Benjamin? She died. So it's a very tragic story for her. In fact, she's buried alongside the road. She is remember when we looked at Machpelah, when we looked at the burial places of Abraham when he bought it from the Hittites? Who is the only one of the patriarchs' wives not buried with all of the other ones? Rachel. Leah is buried with Jacob. Isaac and Rebekah are buried together. Abraham and Sarah are buried together. Rachel was buried alongside of the road someplace. Very, very tragic story. So what does Leah desire in verses 31 and 32, 33 and 34? Woo! If I can only let Jacob a son, then Jacob will do what? He'll love me. First kid comes out. If I could just give my husband another child, then maybe he'll love me. No. Third time, no. Fourth time, tragedy. 32 to 34, how is each child's name a reflection of that? All right, verse 32, Reuben is her firstborn. For she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. I find this interesting too because this form is very close to when Hagar was out in the desert. Remember when she ran away? And the angel of the Lord showed up and said, what's going on, Hagar? She said, my mistress is treating me terrible. And he said, go back home. You're going to have a son, and you should name him Ishmael, and he shall be the father of many nations. And afterwards, she named that place, God sees me. Isn't that interesting? In the midst of that conflict. Same idea that's going on here. Because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will do what, church? Yeah, my husband will love me. Yeah, Bill, please. Oh, of course. It doesn't make her happy because the desire of her heart right now is that she's loved. All right? I love going researching deeper on this because I always keep seeing the deeper connections with the entirety of Genesis. This issue is going to come up again with Joseph, by the way. It's going to be very, very interesting about how Joseph treats his brothers, who's taking the lead on things, who Jacob sends places. It's all going to come to a deeper understanding when you begin to understand whose kids who. Because it's still manifesting, all right? Years later, after those two ladies are dead, Jacob still has these issues that he's wrestling with, and the boys are suffering of it because of that, okay? 2, verse 33, she conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord, interesting language, isn't it? The first one was seen. The third one is now what, church? Yeah, he's heard that I am not loved. Okay? And he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon. Okay? Which the names are connected with the verbs, by the way. Okay? Verse 34, and again she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, now at last my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. So he was named in English Levi. In Hebrew it's Levi. That's how that's pronounced, Levi. Which if you think about the group, the name, you lengthen the I anyway. They're called Levites, all right? So it's Levi. That's how that's pronounced. Jeff?
In my version, after the second son, Simeon, it does say that because the Lord has heard that I am hated.
Oh, that is good. Let me go back up to that, Jeff. Jeff, read it in the RSV again.
It says, because the Lord, she conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated.
Yes.
This son also, and she named him.
There we go. There's the word I was looking for, Jeff. Because the Lord has heard that I am hated. Yeah. It's a comparative word. It doesn't mean that Jacob literally hates her. It's a term of degrees. Does that make sense? That's what that means. All right. 3, we got Levi. 4:35, she conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, I don't give a rip what my husband says. That's where she's at. All right. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time, I'm not thinking about my husband. I'm thinking about my true husband. How about that for a twist? I'm thinking about my true husband, which is the Lord. So she named him Yehuda, which means what? Praise. Yeah, then she stopped having children. Isn't that interesting too? Yeah. Very significant things here if you just stop and wrestle with them a little bit. Some older translations note that the word Yehuda means a confessor or one who acknowledges God and gives him praise. Isn't that it's a great definition of that? And that's from Clark. Clark was a commentator in the late 1800s. I have his commentaries. Brilliant man. What was so different about the birth of Judah? Leah's focus was no longer on her husband, but focused on, church, the grace of the Lord. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was later forbidden? Leviticus 18 and 18. Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife. Did you notice the key word in there, by the way? What is it? Rival. That's intent. Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife and have sexual relations with her while your wife is living. All right? You need to kill your first one. And then, not really. Okay. Taking a wife's sister as a rival wife, that was later forbidden in the Levitical law. Western culture has done away with the bride price. What has been lost in this cultural expectation? Ideas? I don't know. I'm the father of 2 daughters. I got ripped off because I had to pay for those weddings. I didn't get anything out of that. Who was that, Deborah? Walid Shobat. Walid Shobat. He was a Palestinian terrorist that got an entry visa to go to Chicago.
This has been
20 years ago. We had him at our church, but he came to know Christ. And so he was asking us about our family, and we said, well, we got 2 daughters. And he goes, so how much did you get for them? I went, what are you talking about? He goes, what was the bride price? I said, we have to pay. We have to pay for the... He was like, that is wrong. So, if your son-in-law wants her, he should have paid. I said, maybe that'll work in my retirement years. I'm not really sure how that goes. So what do you think has been lost in that cultural expectation, by the way? I think it's a valid question.
Realistically, 14 years of his life to be with her, so that's a big sacrifice.
At the end of the day, he worked 14 years for the woman that he loved. Absolutely, yeah.
I guess maybe it would cut down on divorce rate because you have to be pretty sure if you're spending all that you
It would cut down on the divorce rate if you had an upfront cost on that thing, because you better be sure that this is going to be the one. Absolutely. Steve?
Yeah, just exactly like that was saying. They don't have much skin in the game to marry someone, whereas this way.
Absolutely.
Money where your mouth is.
You're exactly right.
It's a significant amount, like 7 years worth of wages.
Yes. Yeah, and Bill and I learned this from Pastor Fred. When he got married, he had to sit down and negotiate with her father and her brothers. And the negotiation price for Lucy was 10 cows. And he's down to 4. I can't remember, Bill. I think they expected him to pay 1 cow a year. I think that was the deal. So he's on the installment plan. He's on the installment plan. She ain't paid off yet. Yeah, I hope she's not repossessed either. So, yeah.
These cultural expectations, or whatever you want to call them, they were not designed by God. So these are designed by men living together, and because God was trying to teach Abraham how to be and worship, and he would have been taught Isaac and Jacob, but these are all cultural things that are going on that are man-made,
They're man-made, and there are a lot of different perspectives on why the bride price arose.
Yeah.
So can you help me with that? Why do you think that system arose? There's lots of cultural reasons, so let's see if you can grab them for me.
So the patriarch can control the descendants.
That could be a point, Kathy, that the father, the patriarch, can control who comes into the family. So if you're
And where?
if you're an undesirable, that price is going to be way beyond your means, and he's not going to accept that. Doc, please.
Carries now, you go ask the parents of the person you want to marry, like ask for permission to get married, that's still carryover.
The carryover traditionally, as I did and my son-in-laws did for me, because it was our expectation, you can't marry my daughter unless you come and ask for her. So that's, well, they got to take me out to a nice restaurant, Doc. I mean, that's just part of the thing.
Wasn't it that you really wanted to have sons because that's where you got more wealth and because you could get more property and all that? So with girls, that was the only way to get any money?
With sons, you had built-in financial security. They're going to take over the business. They're going to be your army. They're going to do whatever that needed to be. You don't get stuff from the girls. So you got to get a little cash out of them in order for that to take place. So when you think about that, however, so there's 2 ways you can think about that perspective. So can you help me out with that? Give me the positive and the negative.
About the women?
Yes. In Jacob's case, it's going to be negative. We're going to see that. All right? Deb said that
He takes some of his property, his livestock and
Yeah,
stuff with him.
well, that's going to be that's going to be just Laban being a rascal. But at the end of the day, the 2 women are going to get a really good dose of dad. All right? So what's the positive and negatives on that? I'll give you the positive. The positive is this. My daughters are my prize possessions. They are the loves of my life. If you're going to marry them, you're going to treat them like princesses, and you're going to pay for it like they're princesses. So if you want them, you're going to pay the price, because they are here in my viewpoint. All right? That rarely happened because it's the negative that happens. All right? Girls weren't valued. So you sold them off. Like what? Property. That's all they were.
And treated as such.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know, did I give you over the hierarchical system, the cultural system before? So when you set forth the cultural hierarchical process, it was male landowners and business owners here. Next, who would be next in line?
Poor men.
Males that don't have money, yes, here. Next.
Slave men. I'm thinking women are.
Male sons who are of legitimate wives. I had to qualify that. Legitimate wives. All right? Next. Males of non-legitimate wives. Next. Male slaves. Next. You see where I'm going with this?
Animals are before.
Well, legitimate wives, all right? They're here, all right? They have authority and power, but in culture, they would not be here, okay? So, and we know this from Judaism. For example, in the legal system, a woman was not allowed to testify in a court. Her testimony was invalid. Nobody would listen to it. A male servant could, all right? So when you get to the legitimate wife, next, illegitimate wives, next, slave girls, or yeah, well, I wouldn't go there. I would go with the daughters, slave girls, and animals. So can you imagine that? So when we get there, you're gonna see this. At some point, Rachel and Leah say to Jacob, "Guess how our dad's treating us? He's not treating us like high-priced daughters. He's treating us like what? Slaves. So if you want to go back home, we'll head back home because we have nothing here. Our dad's already blown our dowry anyway. So by forcing you to work even more and robbing you and stealing from you and doing everything else that he keeps doing." I'm going to answer this question real quick and then we'll go through. Number one, the sense of value for the groom, 10 cows. All right. Number two, the sense of value to the bride. I am worth 10 cows. All right. And third, the sense of contractual connection to her family, which is what Kathy was talking about as well, that this is going to increase my family, which oftentimes happen because we're going to marry here to here because if we put our two families together, we're going to be a powerhouse. It doesn't matter if you love each other. It doesn't matter. This is a business deal, and that's how this is working itself out, all right? I'm going to stop here, all right? Is there only one more question? We'll follow it through. I can. Yes, please. Yeah. So number one is the sense of value for the groom. There's the link. If you value my daughter, you're going to pay the bride price for her, whatever that agreement is. Two, the sense of value to the bride. All right. I am worth the 10 cows. Okay. Because in some sense, she does have a right to say no or to talk to dad about the price, if you would. Third, the sense of contractual connection to her family. That is then intermarrying families for the benefit of both families, not so much for the kids. They're just trying to connect them up together. All right. All good? Yeah, Doc, and then we'll close. Oh, and one more, I'm sorry. Yeah, Doc, please. Zipporah, yes.
Wife of Moses.
Yes.
And also Zipporah, not the slave, but the attendant, Leah, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Same name?
Zilpah, different girl. So
The name's spelled the same way, that's why.
it's close to it, yeah, but not the same. So how does this story help us to understand that God works through unpleasant stories that don't seem to ever be resolved? There's my last question for the night. What do you think about that?
God always elevates the underdog.
He always elevates the underdogs. He does. Yep. Anything else? How does this story help us to understand that God works through unpleasant stories that don't seem to ever be resolved? This is messy, isn't it? This whole story is mess. It doesn't get resolved until Joseph. Jeff, you're exactly right. This is perpetuated. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is interesting. The line of Jesus came through who? The fourth son of an unloved woman. God works out his perfect will through messy relationships for his glory, and in many cases, church, he doesn't fix them. And he didn't fix this, which is interesting.
And still today, thousands of years later, we're still having babies thinking we can fix it.
And thousands of years later, we're still having babies that think they're going to fix some marriage, and it just, or some relationship, it just doesn't work. You're exactly right. Yeah. Good deal. All right. Anything, other thoughts as we close together tonight, church? I love this story. There's so much in here to wrestle with. Good stuff. So you have to hang on, because this is going to go from chapter 29 to about 39. You've got 10 chapters of watching this stuff unravel, which is good. So, any other thoughts before we go?
It just solidifies the fact that God is in every detail
He is.
of every person.
Yeah. God is in every detail of every person's life. And I love the thing that encourages me, and I think is an encouragement to others. I think about Chris and Cindy and others in the jail ministry. This is a wonderful passage to say to someone who they feel that God doesn't care about them, or that God doesn't see them. It's a great passage to say, God does see you, He does hear you, and God will work this out. If you get to the point where it's not about doing things to please somebody else, but if you get to the point where you start pleasing who? Isn't that a great application right there? It's not about pleasing Jacob. She could have had 50 kids, and that guy would have still not what? He still would have not loved her. So she got down to the fourth boy and said, reevaluate here. I'm just going to praise the Lord. I've got 4 boys. That's good enough. And so she was seen, she was heard, she was loved. That's a great application for that. Yeah. How about we leave there? That's a good one. Let me pray for us. Father, we love you. Thank you for your goodness to us as we keep thinking about these lives of people that, I wouldn't want my life in the Bible. All this stuff gone wrong and bad choices I made and all kinds of other things that, I would look back and say, gosh, I hope nobody reads that. And yet the Lord, you put imperfect people in the scriptures for that very reason, so that we can see imperfect people and we can watch how you work in their lives. We can see hope. We can see challenge. We can see difficulty, but we see you right in the middle of all of that stuff. I think you work best when things are messy, God. And we get a chance to see that. And so we ask that you'll just continue to give us eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart that truly understands you and the stories that are before us, so that we actually can go out and live better lives as followers of Christ because of those stories. 1 Corinthians 10 said, all of these things have been written down for you as an example. And so we need to take that to heart, Lord. So bless us, Lord, as your people. Give us strength through the rest of the evening, restful night's sleep, a good day tomorrow, and then through the weekend. Perhaps we're going to have an opportunity to apply the things that we've learned tonight, Lord. And if we do, we say thank you. And we ask all this in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, please. Amen. Thank you, church. Appreciate your time tonight.